just give us a quick overview about your career, how you got to this point, where that racing bug first got you.
Yeah, well, I started a long time ago. So when I was 6, I started in go-karts. Yeah, did 10 years of go-karting, then went into cars with 16. Then went to America for a long time, raced in Indy cars. I won Rookie of the Year at the Indy 500, finished second in a race there as well, and tested in F1 in 2014 as well. Raced in Australia in supercars, and now I'm with Porsche since 5 years, so being in the Formula E program. So it's been quite a long journey. I've driven a lot of different cars, but for sure, you know, when I raced in season 2 in Formula E as well, so the first time I got to race an electric car was a bit strange as well. You know, I think we all were a bit skeptical in the beginning when the championship came aboard, but now, you know, we really see that the technology is advancing really quickly, and I think it's a really fun championship to be involved. Even as a driver, you know, there's so much changing. How you have to drive the cars as well is completely different than what you learn from junior categories. So it's really a big challenge actually for us.
I was going to say, you've obviously driven Formula 1 cars. Can you pinpoint some of the main differences, aside of the electric part, of course?
Yes.
What are the differences between that and driving a Formula E car?
Well, the sound is really different, you know. So, but it's, you know, the F1 car, you know, it's amazing to drive. You know, it's going to do everything perfectly. And the Formula E car is the racing, first of all, that's the biggest difference, how you race, because you have this energy management that you have to do pretty much from lap 1. You have to be, you know, lifting and, you know, coasting to manage to actually finish the race. So that creates, you know, a different concept of racing. Sometimes if you want to attack somebody, you know, maybe you can do it right away, or you wait a little bit and bag a bit more energy. So these are all scenarios that you don't really have that much in other type of racing. And, you know, but for sure the sound, you know, is the biggest difference. I think the first race I did in Formula E was in 2015. And I remember getting on the grid, and I was sitting there and I was hearing this, and I was like, what is this? And it was my heart rate, you know, because I never heard it before in a race car. So it was just really, really strange. But and the wind noise or the curbs, you know, that's different. So in the beginning it feels a bit weird, but once you start driving, you know, it becomes like a race car and you just try to go fast. But those are some things, yeah.
And how difficult is it to manage the strategy during a race, especially like today, where there's 3 extra laps and everyone's watching the power disappear? How hard is that to manage mid-race?
Yeah, so actually, you know, the car is so advanced that it tells us, you know, how much energy we can use per lap, and, you know, if we are using a bit more energy, how we can compensate that as well, you know. So it just kind of tells us. But I think the hardest part is like what we saw today. You know, there were some people leading, and you would think any driver, you know, just wants to drive away, you know, but you're just not efficient in doing that. So you have to kind of almost, you know, take it back and let some people go. And that, you know, I think for us it's just frustrating, because you're like, okay, you know, you're going to be behind and you're going to be more in chaos and stuff like that. So the team really helps you with that as well, from what they see, what other people are doing, especially with the attack mode. But yeah, it's a different concept, and you need to learn it. And I think that's why it makes Formula E quite difficult as well, you know, for us driver, because you have this different component that you have to be on top of that usually don't really have. Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're here with Cato Networks. They deal a lot with data, and data has become more and more prevalent in motorsport. How important is that data for you, whether it be from the simulator or the factory, or communicating the data between the factory and the team? Yeah,
it's huge. I think nowadays, you know, as a race car driver, I think all of us are pretty quick, you know, and really that's thanks to data, because I can really compare, you know, what my teammate is doing, so I can see if he's doing a corner a little bit differently, if he's braking later, accelerating before, or carrying more speed. Like, I can see that, so I can almost copy that a little bit. And you know, it's a huge tool, even, you know, in my whole racing career, you know, even in IndyCar, for example, when you at Indy and you qualifying the car, you know, you're going 380 k's an hour top speed, or 365 average, so it's quite fast, and the engineer will see on the data that you can lower the wing and go a little bit quicker, so you have to kind of trust that as well, and just get it done on the race car. So so yeah, it's really important. And in the sim as well, you know, we do, in Formula E, we do all the development before we go to the racetrack at the simulator, so we spend a lot of time there, and all the data that we collect actually there, and everything that is positive then gets put in the car when we start first practice at the races.
Yeah. Now, a big topic of discussion always at a Formula E race is sustainability and climate change, but also diversity and inclusion. You're obviously one of the women that are pioneering the sport for more women to be involved. How can Formula E help encourage more women into the sport?
Yeah, I think, we see in the paddock, there's quite a lot of women involved, in the engineering side, as well by Porsche. We have one who's doing all the data and all that. And I think if we have more women involved, I think it will create also, a lot of opportunities. And actually also, I think young girls, when they see women behind the pit stand or driving and things like that, I think that's really, to be a good role model. But, it's still a fight. I'm still a reserve driver, so, I still need to, work a bit harder to become a main driver. But, hopefully times are changing, and, I think we're going the right direction. But for sure, we still need a little bit of a push.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is the future for you? Obviously, you want a full-time seat, presumably. That's got to be the goal.
Yeah, I've been hoping, every race weekend, and I was expecting you guys to help, that something happens to Pascal or something. So for tomorrow, I won't say anything. No, but yeah, I think being involved in program is really cool, and hopefully some other races, maybe an IndyCar are coming along, and I have a little bit of a weird winter project with bobsledding at the moment.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of driving, but yeah, hopefully, I'll be in a Formula E car pretty soon as well.
God, not so much data needed for bobsleigh, I'd imagine.
Well, no, actually, I decided to change the world of bobsled because there's no data, but I come from car racing, so I'm trying to push the Swiss team to maybe, actually the sled has been at Porsche as well, so exactly. So we're trying to improve it a bit as well.
So Cato Networks are now going to get into bobsleighing.
You're welcome. You're welcome to support me in my crazy adventures. So
finally, before we open it up to the floor, how important is it to have partners like Cato Networks involved with the race team?
Yeah, I think any partner, but especially you guys. I think with all the data and all these things, that we also use, really, really tremendously. It helps us grow and become more efficient and all that. So I think that's really cool, and I think hopefully the involvement grows as well. That we get even a better performance on track.
Brilliant. Well, as we said, Simona has driven pretty much everything you can drive in motorsport. Does anyone have any questions for her that they'd like to ask?
Yes. Yeah. How I practice. Well, so in Formula E, because you have all the practice, you don't, like the cars go from one race to the other one. You just have to, you do a lot in the simulator. So pretty much all the practice happens in the simulator, and that's how we prepare. We do have some test days, but those are limited. So for every team, it's the same actually. But everything gets done in the sim at the moment. It's really changed from back in the day, but yeah. So.
But is that similar to actually compete? Or?
Well, on the data, it really is. Like all the data we get from the sim, for the engineer, it's exactly the same. It really correlates. For us drivers, it's a bit different because in the car you really feel a lot like through your body, to be at the limit, and it's kind of hard to do that on the simulator. But we get used to it, so we adapt to the sim a bit, and we drive the sim fast, so it kind of correlates after that a little bit, yeah. There you go.
Great question,
yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Cool.
So what's the difference between Formula E and Formula 1, right? If you put like a Max Verstappen in a Formula E car and vice versa. Is it entirely different, or?
Yeah, it's different because the Formula 1 car has a lot of downforce. You don't have this energy saving. You do have like tire wear saving, stuff like that. But for sure, if you put Max in the car, he will be quick. But it's a bit the learning how to drive these cars. If you see everyone who's been driving Formula E, they really stay in Formula E because it is pretty specific, and it just takes a little bit of time to understand how the concept of the race. In Formula 1, you just push. Maybe you manage the gap and stuff, but like you saw today, you had to let people by, and stuff like that, and that's a different type of racing where you can't really compare it to any racing out there. So that's the difficult part of it, I would say. And the car is tricky to drive as well because the braking is done over the motor, so you're not braking with the brakes, and that's a strange feeling as well. You have to adapt to that. So those are the things that are really, really different. Yeah. There you go. Cool.
Yeah. Couple more.
Yeah.
What things, in your opinion, what things are better in the Formula E cars compared to the regular Formula One cars?
Well, you know, you can't say better. It's just such a different concept. You know, I think what is really exciting about Formula E now, you know, we're season 9 now, and if you see how the technology evolved, you know, when I raced, you know, what was it, like 7 years ago, we still had to switch cars in the middle of the race because the battery wasn't, you know, big. It didn't have the capacity that it has today. You know, we're driving at 350 kilowatts now. I think back then we were driving 150 kilowatts. So within 9 years, the cars really evolved a lot. Even the Gen 3, you know, it has a motor at the rear, motor at the front. That's all, you know, what electric cars in the traffic are using. So I think that's what's quite cool to be involved with that. Yeah.
Just one thing.
Yeah.
The acceleration is stronger.
Well,
because for us it appears like a jet.
Yeah, it is. It is. So it's actually, especially this car, because there's so much power. You know, 350 kilowatts, quite a lot. So you have to be super careful with how you go on power. Like that's a little bit of an art to it. You know, not to use up the tires and stuff like that. And you adapt to that as well. Yeah. So it's really instant. Yeah, for sure.
And one more.
Yeah, about the tech mode, what is the meaning of it and how
Yeah,
you
well,
go on?
I think it got inspired from Mario Kart a little bit, so I don't know. But yeah, it's just, so you do, you saw that you have to do a little bit extra, you know, extra meters, you know, to get it, but you get extra power. So when you drive, in the race we're driving 300 kilowatt, and once we go over the loops, we have, for a period of time, we have 350 kilowatts.
But it gets less time. I mean, in the beginning was around.
Well, so that's mandated from the FIA. So tomorrow, for example, it'll be different. So sometimes it can be 8 minutes long, like one big 8 minutes long, or sometimes like today, I think it was 1 minute or 3 minutes. So they will mandate you have to go twice or 3 times, and then if, let's say, if it's 8 minutes, you can manage how much you have to do it, but you have to go so many times over it. Yeah. So it adds a bit of craziness a bit to the thing, and with the Gen 3 we see it a bit less, you know, because of this, you know, not wanting to lead at the moment. We didn't have that much of that in the Gen 2 because the car was a little bit different, and you had the extra power. You could really drive away, which is not really happening with this car at the moment. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the questions.
Cool.
One more. Go on then. Yep.
One more.
At the end, we see that the guys with the highest battery level go ahead again, then they win this game or win this race, and the others, they can't. Is it really feasible?
Yeah. So what happens at the end of the race is that the software will cut the power. So that's what happened on the straightaway. I think people came out of the last corner with 0.3 and some had 0.6. Yeah. So they would have accelerated and then the car would just shut down. That's why some people just passed, like Pascal did. So it's in the thing, yeah. So you're full power, but if you have no more power, it just dies on you. Exactly. Well, it's like kind of running out of fuel, actually. Similar thing. Yes. Yeah. There you go.